So this is exactly the project in which we are going to be working today on today's tutorial. Now let me show you how it works. I'm going to select an image from my computer, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm going to ask a question about this image. I'm going to ask, what is this image about? And I get the image is of a man riding a horse with a dog in a field. Amazing. Now I'm going to ask another question. I'm going to ask, please tell me the bounding boxes of all detected objects in the image. And I get the detected objects in the image are dog, horse, and person. The bounding boxes for each object are, and I get 3 bounding boxes. So this is amazing, and this is exactly the project in which we are going to work today. We are going to work with Python, Streamlit, and LangChain. We are going to work with LangChain on today's tutorial, and now let's get started. So let's get started with this tutorial. This is exactly the project in which we are going to be working today on today's tutorial. Basically, we are going to be creating a web application using Python, Streamlit, and LangChain. This is exactly the project in which we are going to be working on today's tutorial. The user is going to ask a question about an image, and this system, this web application, is going to answer the question and is going to return this answer back to the user. So this is exactly the project in which we are going to be working today. And in order to do so, we are going to use LangChain, this amazingly powerful framework in order to work with large language models, and we're going to get more familiar with LangChain on today's tutorial. Basically, I'm going to give you like a very super high level description of how this works, of how this system which involves LangChain works. Basically, remember, we are going to be creating an agent, and this agent is going to use a large language model, and it's also going to use tools in order to answer our question, right? We are going to be making questions to the agent, and the agent is going to use a large language model, and it's also going to use tools in order to answer our question. That's like an amazingly simple and an amazingly high level description of how this system works, but that's what I want you to remember for now. And trust me, this is going to be much more clear later on this tutorial. So this is the high level description of the project in which we are going to be working today, and now let's continue. Let's go to PyCharm so I can show you the PyCharm project I have created for today's tutorial. Let me show you these 3 files. These files are called main.py, functions.py, and tools.py. In main.py, we have the entire process of the web application we are going to create today. You can see it starts saying initialize agent, then set title, set header, upload file, and so on. This is all the sequence of steps we need to make, we need to code in order to make this web application up and running, right? So this is the entire process, the entire pipeline we are going to be making today. Now let's move to functions.py, and you can see that here we have 2 functions. One of them is called getImageCaption and then detect objects. So these are 2 functions which are going to be super amazingly important for today's tutorial, and let me tell you why. Because if we move to tools.py, you can see that we have 2 class definitions. One of them is called image caption tool, and the other one is object detection tool. And these are the 2 tools we are going to create in order to allow the agent to answer our questions. Remember, if we go back to this diagram over here, I told you the agent was going to use tools, right? It was going to use tools in order to answer our question. And remember, our question is about detecting objects in the image and about describing the image, right? Generating an image caption. So the tools our agent needs in order to answer our questions are exactly these 2. We need a tool in order to detect objects, and we need another tool in order to generate descriptions for our images. So if we go back to PyCharm, you can see that the 2 classes we have over here are called image caption tool and object detection tool. So these are exactly the tools we need to create in order to give the agent and in order to allow the agent to answer our question, right? So now things are a little more clear, right? And things are going to be much more clear as we move forward with this tutorial. So these are exactly the classes, the tools we are going to create today in tools.py, and this is why the functions we are going to make here are going to be super amazingly important, right? Once we have these functions up and running, creating these tools is going to be super amazingly simple. So these are the three files in which we are going to work on today's tutorial: main.py, functions.py, and tools.py. And obviously we also have a requirements.txt file with all the packages we need in order to work on this tutorial. You can see that these packages are LangChain, Streamlit, OpenAI, Tabulate, and Team. So these are the requirements you need to install in order to work on this tutorial. And now let me show you something else. If I go back to my browser, I'm going to show you this library which is called Transformers. And this package is going to make our tutorial much more simple. It's going to make our process of detecting objects and generating captions much more simple. If I scroll down, you can see the description over here. It says Transformers provides thousands of pre-trained models to perform tasks on different modalities such as text, vision, and audio. So this is an amazingly powerful library which we can just use, and we can use many pre-trained models which are already available, and we can just use them out of the box. This is an amazing library, and this is exactly how we are going to detect objects and how we're going to generate captions in our images. And these are exactly the two models we are going to use. We're going to use this model over here, which is Salesforce Blip Image Captioning Large, in order to generate our captions, and we're going to use this other model, Facebook DETR ResNet 50, in order to detect the objects in our image. So this is very important, and this is something I wanted to show you before continue with this tutorial. Now let's go back to PyCharm. Let me tell you exactly what's the process we are going to follow today. We're going to start on main.py, obviously, but we are going to create the entire front of our web application, right? We are going to start with the title, then we're going to create the header, then upload file, and so on. And we're not really going to do anything regarding the agent, right? We are just going to create the front of our web application, and that's all we're going to do for now. We're going to start in main.py, and we're going to create the web application. Only the web application, nothing regarding the agent, nothing regarding LangChain, right? Only the web application for now, only the front of this web application. Then we are going to move to functions.py, and we are going to code these functions, and this is where we are going to use this library, Transformers. And then once the functions are created, we are going to move to tools.py, and we are going to create our custom tools. We are going to create the image caption tool and the object detection tool. And then once the custom tools are created, we are going to get back here to main.py, and we are going to create the agent, we are going to initialize the agent, and then we're going to integrate the agent into our web application. So that's exactly the process we are going to follow on this tutorial. And now let's get started with the first part. Let's set up this web application up and running. And let's start by importing Streamlit as ST. Obviously, this is a very important import if we are going to create a web application using Streamlit. And now let's continue by setting up the title of this web application. And the title is going to be something like, please ask a question to an image. It's a very generic title, and maybe we can just remove the please. Ask a question about an image. This is going to be the title of our web application. Then we are going to call st_header, and we are going to say something like, please upload an image, right? So we have already completed these two steps. We have set up the title and the header, and now let's create a widget in order to upload a file. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to create a new variable, which is file, and this is going to be equal to file st.fileuploader. The first argument is going to be an empty string, and then the second argument is going to be all the types which are supported in this widget, which is going to be something like JPEG, JPG, and PNG. Then, once the user has uploaded a file, we are going to continue. So I'm going to do this, and the first thing we're going to do is to display the image back to the user, right? So we are going to call st.image, we're going to input the image, or actually the file the user has uploaded, and then we are going to call useColumnWidth equal to true. And then let's continue. Then the next step is to create another widget, which is going to be the text input, the text box the user is going to use in order to write the question, right? So this is how we're going to do. We're going to create a new variable, which is user question. And this is going to be equal to st.textInput. And this is going to be ask a question about your image. Right? So we have created the text input, the text box, where the user is going to write the question he or she is going to ask the image. And then we are not going to compute the agent response for now, because remember that's something we are going to do at the end of this process. That's going to be the last step. The last step is going to be creating the agent and integrating this agent with the web application. So for now, let's just write like a very dummy output, like a very dummy response. So this is what I'm going to do. If user question and user question different than an empty string, then I am going to write a very generic and a very dummy response, right? This is only for debugging purposes. Obviously, once we have integrated the agent and once we have our agent up and running, we are just going to compute the response and we are going to write the response. But for now, in order to make sure everything is working properly, let's just write this dummy response. Now let's go to the terminal, because I'm going to execute Streamlit run main.py. This is the command we are going to execute in order to execute our web application, right? In order to visualize our web application. So let's see what happens. And it seems I have an error because this is not types, but this is type. Let's see now if I go back to the browser and I refresh. Now everything seems to be okay. This is the title, this is the header, and this is the widget in order to display an image, in order to upload an image. So I'm just going to select an image from my computer. I'm going to select this one, and let's see if we can visualize it properly. Everything's okay. Now ask a question about your image. This other widget is working properly too. I'm going to do something like a random string, and I get a dummy response. So everything seems to be okay for now. Now let's go back to PyCharm, because now it's time to continue with the next step, which is writing the functions in functions.py. And we're going to start with this function, we get image caption, and then we are going to move to detect objects. And let's start by importing a couple of functions, a couple of methods from the transformers library. We're going to say from transformers import bleep processor, and we're also going to import bleep for conditional generation. These are two modules we need in order to continue with this function, in order to code this function, and this is exactly how we're going to use the transformers library. Now let's continue. We are going to receive an image path, and let's start by reading the image. So we are going to define a new variable, which is image, and obviously we need to import from pil import image. And now that we have imported image, now I can do something like image.open, and I'm going to input the image path, and then I'm going to convert to RGB. Okay, so this is the image we are reading from our computer. And now let's create the model we are going to use in order to generate the captions on our images. So I'm going to start by defining a variable which is model name, and model name will be the name of the model we are going to use, which is Salesforce bleep image captioning large. This is just the name of the model we are going to use. Now let's continue. Then I'm going to set another variable, which is device. In my case, I'm going to set device in CPU because I'm going to run this code locally in my computer. But if you have a GPU in your computer and your GPU is available, then you can also run it in your GPU by setting this variable to CUDA. Then I'm going to define another variable, which is processor, and processor will be bleep processor dot from pre-trained, and this is where I'm going to input the model name, right? This is the processor I'm going to create for this model. And then I need to say to device. Okay, that's pretty much all. Then it's time to create the model. So I'm going to create another variable, which is model, and this is going to be bleep for conditional generation, and we're also going to say from pre-trained model name, and then we are also going to say to device. Okay, and that's pretty much all in order to create the model and in order to create this processor, which is another object we need in order to make this process to work. So let's continue. We have already created the image, we have already opened the image, and then we need to do something else, which is we need to convert this image, we need to transform this image into another representation, which is the representation we need in order to generate these captions, and this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to define another variable, which is inputs, and inputs will be something like processor, and I'm going to input the image, and I'm also going to input return tensors equal to pt, if I'm not mistaken. This is just a parameter we need to input, and then to device, right? And this is pretty much all. So the only thing we're doing in this sentence is taking our image and transforming our image into another representation. But please focus, please mind that this is exactly the same information, right? We are just taking the image and we are processing this image. We are transforming this image. And now it's time to generate our outputs, or only the output, right? Because we're going to create only one caption. And this is going to be something like equal to model.generate. We are going to input this new variable we have created, and this is how we are going to input this variable. Please mind these two characters over here, and then we are going to say something like max new tokens equals to 20. And then the last thing we need to do is to create another variable, which is caption. This is going to be the caption we are going to generate. We're going to call processor again, but this time we're going to call the decode function from processor, and we are going to input the output we got from this model, and then we are going to input another parameter, which is skip special tokens equal to true. And that's pretty much all. If I'm not mistaken, this is pretty much all, and the only thing I'm going to do now is to return caption. And now I will scroll down and I will test this function. Let's test this function to make sure everything is okay. So I'm going to call get image caption, and I'm going to input an image path, which I'm going to define now. I'm just going to use the same image path, the same image we used a few minutes ago when we were testing the web application, and it's test.jpg. Okay, this is going to return the caption, and now let's print the caption and let's see what happens. And we have an error: conversion from RGB to RBG not supported. I think I made a mistake. So this is RGB. Okay, let's see now. Okay, I made another mistake. It seems bleep processor has no attribute 2, so this is not right. Let's see now. And now everything seems to be okay, and I got this output which says there is a man on a horse with a dog in the field. And let's take a look at this image again, and you can see that this is exactly what we have in the image, right? There is a man on a horse with a dog in the field. So the image capturing is working just fine. Everything is super well, super fine. And now let's continue. So we have completed one of our two functions, and now let's move to the other function, which is detect objects. And let me show you something first. Remember the website I showed you a few minutes ago, the Transformers website, and specifically these two pages, which are the pages of the models we are going to use today. This is the page of the model we have just used, which is Salesforce Blip Image Capturing Large. And if I scroll down, you can see that here, in using the PyTorch model, running the model on a CPU, and if I click here in click to expand, you are going to see some Python code, right? And this is exactly the code you need in order to use this model, in order to execute this model. And if you look closely, this is exactly the same code we have used here in PyCharm just now, right? It's exactly the same code, or it's pretty much the same code. So this is a very good thing from the Transformers library. I will say many of the models in this library, if not all of them, many of the models in this library already have this piece of code, this snippet, with exactly the exact instructions you need in order to use this model, in order to execute this model. So guess what we are going to do now? We are just going to this other page from the other model, from the object detection model, and we're just going to scroll down until this section over here, and we're just going to copy and paste the code in this section, and we're just going to take it to PyCharm, right? Because this is exactly the code we need in order to run this model. So let's just do that. I'm going to copy these two models, which we are going to import from Transformers, and I'm going to say something like this. Okay, and now we also need to import Torch. Okay. We are not going to copy paste absolutely everything, but many of the things we are going to copy and paste it because it's exactly what we need. I'm going to copy this, which is where we are opening the image. This is going to be exactly the same, obviously. And then we are just going to copy and paste these two lines, and also this one, and then pretty much everything else. Yeah. So I'm just going to do this, right? This is exactly the same step we took in the previous function, which is creating a processor, creating a model. Then we are just processing the image, and we are creating this new variable, and then we're just generating the output, right? We're just generating the prediction. And then the only thing we're doing is just some additional processing, and then we're just getting this variable, which is the results. These are all the results from the object detection. So the only thing we need to do now is to go through all these results and to extract the values, right? The bounding boxes, the confidence values, and the labels. And we are going to do another edit, because although this is exactly the information we are getting here, I am going to edit the way we are parsing through this information, because I want to return something differently. I'm going to define another variable, which is red, and this is going to, let's call it detections, and this is going to be an empty string for now. And then I'm going to say detections plus equal to, this is going to be something like another string, and this is how I'm going to create this string. I'm going to say something like this. And then this is going to be format int box 0, and then box 1, box 2, and box 3. And that's pretty much all. I think I made a mistake here, so I'm just going to add an additional parenthesis. And that's pretty much all. Okay, then we are also going to add the label and the confidence score, and this is how I am going to do. I'm just going to add format, and the way I'm going to do it is by calling, if I'm not mistaken, this is model.names, and I'm just going to int label, right? Because this is how we're going to get the name of the class we are detecting. And then let's just add an additional element, which is the confidence score. And this is how we're going to do exactly the same format. This is going to be a float and then score. Okay, and then let's just end this string with a new line character, because the way it works is that while we are going through all the results, all the detections, each one of these detections is going to be a new line in this string, right? And this is exactly how we need to do it. So I'm just going to return detections, and please mind that we are taking as input a path, the location of an image, and the output is another string. Please mind this detail, because this is a very, very, very important detail, and you're going to see why when we move to the next file, which is tools.py. So we're going to return detections, which is a string, and let's see if this function works properly. I'm just going to call detect objects, and this is going to be detections. And let's see what happens. Okay, I got an error, and it seems this object has no attribute called names. And I think I know how to fix it. I think if we go here, this is not model.names, but this is more like model.config .id to label, if I'm not mistaken. And now this should work. Let's see what happens now. Okay, and now everything seems to be just fine, because we are printing something that looks like a bounding box, then we are printing a class name, and then we are printing the confidence value. And also we are printing an individual line, a different line for every new object, right? We are detecting 3 objects, and for each one of these objects we are printing a new line, which is exactly what we have defined over here. Please focus that this is only one string, right? Detections is one string, and this is how the string looks like. Okay, so we are ready. The functions.py file is now ready, and we can just continue to the next file, which is tools.py. So we are moving one step at a time, but we are moving super quickly and super smoothly. Now let's see how we can create the tools in this file. And this is one of the most important parts in this tutorial, because this is where we're going to create custom tools using LangChain. So let me show you. Let's start with image caption tool. And I want you to focus on the structure of this tool, right? The first thing you need to focus is that we are importing from langchain.tools, we're importing base tool, and we are creating a child from base tool. That's the first thing I want you to focus. Then please mind these 2 attributes. One of them is called name and the other one is called description. And then these 2 functions, these 2 methods. One of them is called run and the other one is a run. So this is the most generic structure, this is the most basic structure for a tool in LangChain, right? So this is very important because this is exactly the structure we are going to use for the tools we are going to create in this tutorial. And I will say this is the most basic tool you can create, because the tool we are going to create is going to receive a string as input and is going to return another string. So this is as simple as it gets. And now let me explain each one of these attributes and each one of these functions. So let's start with the name, and this is going to be the name of our tool, right? And the name of this tool is going to be image captioner, right? Because we are going to be creating an image captioner. That's the name of this tool. Then the description, this is very important, and I will say this is the most important part in the tool. One of the most important parts in this tool. The name is not really that important. You can just call this tool whatever you want, but the description, that's very important. And let me show you. And this is how the agent will know what tool, which tool to use in different situations. So this is very important. If you remember this image I showed you when we were starting this tutorial, I told you that the agent was going to use a large language model and is going to use tools It's going to use many tools. Potentially, it could use many tools. We are going to provide the agent with these 2 tools, and there may be many other built-in tools as well. So potentially, the agent could have many tools to choose from. In a given situation, in a given task, for a given question, the agent could have many tools to choose from. And this is exactly how the agent will know what tool to use, which tool to use in different situations, by looking at the description. So this is how we are going to write the description for the image captioner. Use this function, use this tool when given the path to an image that you would like to be described. Okay. The return, or maybe the response, or maybe it will return a short caption describing the image, right? You can see that we are just describing what this tool is about, and we are telling the agent, we are just talking with the agent, we are speaking with the agent, and we are telling the agent, use this tool when given the path to an image that you would like to be described. It will return a short caption describing the image, or maybe we can say a simple caption describing the image, right? We are telling the agent exactly what's the functionality of this tool, exactly what this tool is for, and we're also telling the agent the input, which is going to be the path to an image, and the caption, which is going to be, the output, which is going to be a simple caption describing the image. So this is very important, and remember, this is exactly how the agent will know what tool to use from all the tools you have available, right? And potentially there could be many tools. So this is very important. So let's continue. Then we have these 2 functions, and we are only going to mind this one, which is run. We are not really going to mind this other function, which is a run, which is meant to be used in case of asynchronous executions, right? Yeah, an asynchronous run. And this is something we are not going to cover on today's tutorial. So we're just going to write this function over here. And this is exactly the function the agent is going to execute when using this tool. And as this is an image captioner, as this is an image caption tool, and as we have already created a function which is getImageCaption, and this function receives a string as input, receives the image path as input, and returns a simple caption describing the image, guess what we are going to do now? Let me show you what we are going to do now. I'm just going to copy and paste the content of this function. We could import this function too, but this is going to be much better, I think. So it's a little cleaner. So I'm just going to return caption, and I need to make a few imports, otherwise this is not going to work. And I also need to rename this variable over here. Let's just make these imports. Let's make the imports torch2, and that's going to be just fine. Yeah, so that's it. So in only a few steps, in only a few minutes, we have created one of our custom tools, which is the image caption tool. So that's it. That's how we create a tool, a custom tool using LangChain. Now let's move to the other tool. I'm going to make this one a little quicker. So the name is going to be something like object detector, and the description, use this function, use this tool when given the path to an image that you would like to detect objects. Okay, that's going to be enough. And then it will return a list of all detected objects. Each element in the list in the format, and this is how we're going to do it. The format, if I'm not mistaken, is x1, y1, x2, y2, it's a bounding box, and then it's a class name, and then it's a confidence score. Let's see if it's okay. So we have the bounding box, we have the label, and we have the confidence score. Yeah, it's okay. So this is going to be just fine. This is going to be enough for the agent to know in what situations to use this tool. Use this tool when given the path to an image that you would like to detect objects. It will return a list of all detected objects, each element in the list in the format x1y1, x2y2, class name, and confidence score. And that's going to be just fine. And then let's copy and paste the content in this function, which is detect objects. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Remember this functions.py function, it's just this functions.py file, it's just an auxiliary file, right? We're not really using the functions. We are not importing the functions. We are not using the functions. We only created that file for educational purposes, right? To make everything much nicer and to make the process much smoother. But we are not really using the functions. We are not really using the file. Now we're going to return detections, and that's going to be just fine. And I need to rename this variable. And that is it. And we are done. We have completed the two custom tools we need in this tutorial. And that's it. You can see how simple this process is, and you can see how smooth everything is so far, right? So we have completed the front of our web application. We have made these functions, and we have already used the functions. We have already used the code in these functions in order to create our custom tools. We are ready in order to continue with creating the agent and with integrating the agent into our web application, and we are almost ready. We are almost done. I am super excited. I don't know about you, but I'm super excited because we are almost there. So let's take it one step at a time. The first thing we need to do is to make a few imports because we are going to create an agent, and in order to do so, we are going to import. We are going to say something like from LangChain.agents import initialize agent. Then we're going to import from LangChain.chatModels. We are going to import chat OpenAI, and from LangChain.chains.conversation.memory we are going to import conversation buffer window memory, which is this one. Okay, that's pretty much all. So these are the three imports we need in order to create our agent and in order to do everything we are going to do now. And now let's continue. I'm just going to write everything here. The first thing I'm going to do is to create another variable, which is tools, and this is going to be a list of all the tools we are going to provide the agent. So I obviously need to import from tools, import image caption tool, and also object detection tool. And the only thing I'm going to do now is to create this list like this, right? We are creating a list with all of our custom tools. Now let's continue. Now let's create another variable, which is conversational memory. This is the object we need in order to provide the agent with memory, right? Because we are going to have a conversation with the agent, and we need the agent, or we want the agent to remember its previous responses. So this is how we're going to do. We're going to call this object we have imported, conversation buffer window memory, and we are going to input a few parameters. So we are going to say memory key. This is going to be equal to chat history, something like this. And then we are going to define exactly how many messages back we are going to remember, which is going to be 5. This is going to be the length of the agent memory, right, or the size of the agent's memory. And then return messages, we are going to put it as true. And that's pretty much all. And now let's create a few additional variables, a few additional objects, because we also need an LLM. If you remember the diagram I showed you a few minutes ago, you will remember that the agent is going to use tools, but it's also going to use a large language model, right? We want to have a conversation with the agent. So we definitely need to provide the agent with the ability to communicate with us. So that's exactly why we need a large language model in order to provide this large language model to the agent as well. And this is where we're going to use another one of our imports, which is chat OpenAI. We are going to define a few parameters. One of them is the OpenAI API key. We are going to set it in none for now, but I'm going to show you exactly how to get this OpenAI API key in a few minutes. Then we are going to set the temperature in 0, because if we use a value of 0 means that the outputs, the response of our agent is going to be less creative, as a matter of speaking. Everything is going to be more exact or more deterministic, right? The agent is not going to be really that creative. And as the tools we are going to use is an image caption tool and an object detection tool, we don't really want the agent to be creative, right? We only want the agent to give us the image description and the objects which were detected in the image. This is not the time to be creative, so we're just going to set a value of 0 for temperature. And now let's continue. And then the only thing we need is to specify the model name, which is going to be GPT 3.5 Turbo, if I'm not mistaken. Turbo. Okay, so this is pretty much the language model, the large language model we're going to use, and the one we're going to provide the agent. And then the only thing we need to do is to initialize this agent. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to call the other import, which is initialize agent. And these are the parameters. The first one is the agent type. We need to specify what's the agent type, and we're going to use a conversational a chat conversational React description type of agent, right? This is exactly the agent we are going to use, the type of agent we are going to use. Then we need to specify what are the tools we're going to use. So we are going to use the tools we have defined here, right? This is how we are going to provide the agent with the tools it needs, right? Then we are going to specify the large language model, which is this one we have defined over here, right? This is how we're going to provide the agent with the large language model. And now let's continue. And another parameter is max iterations, and we're just going to set it in 5. And the reason for this parameter, what it does is telling the agent to try for only 5 iterations, right? Because once the agent is up and running and the agent is working and is working super hard in order to give us a reply, to give us a response, to answer our question, sometimes the agent works so hard that just going to try once and again with all the different tools or with all the different ways it can to give us a response. And sometimes it's just like an ongoing process and an endless process. So in order to tell the agent to try hard but not so hard, we are just going to set this variable in 5. And this is very important. Nevertheless, in the examples we are going to use, we are just going to do like only 1 iteration because the questions are going to be super straightforward. But in a more complex scenario, the agent could be using like all the tools it has available. It could like use them many different times. So this parameter, it may be more important in other examples, in other projects. And this is exactly what it means. So let's continue. The other variable is verbose equal true, because we want to see, we want to be aware of exactly what the agent is doing, right? This is a tutorial, this is an educational tutorial, so I want to show you exactly the agent's process, the thought process. And then we're also going to set this other variable, which is memory, and this is going to be the conversational memory we have defined over here. And then I think the only variable we have left is the early stopping method, which we are going to set in generate. And that's pretty much all. So this is exactly the agent we have created. This is exactly the agent we have initialized. And this is very important because we are almost there. We have completed another step in our process. And now let's continue. Let's scroll down because the only thing we need to do now is to integrate the agent here, and it's to compute our response. We are going to tell the agent to respond our question, right? So let's see how we can do that. And this is going to be super straightforward. The only thing we're going to do is to define a new variable, which is going to be called response. And response will be agent.run. Remember, the agent we have created, it's called agent. And then agent.run, and this is where we're going to specify the user's question, and this is also where we are going to tell the agent the image path, the image location. Because remember, the tools we have created, we told the agent that use this tool when given the path to an image, right? So we definitely need to provide the agent with the path to the image, and this is how we're going to do. This is where we're going to input the user question, and then this is the image path. Okay. And now the only thing we need to do is .format user question and image path. And everything is just fine, but obviously we have not defined the image path, because the way it currently works, the user is going to upload the image, and the image is going to be a file, and it's like a different type of object. So let's see how we can convert this file into something like an image path. And this is how we're going to do. The first thing we need to do is to make an additional import. We're going to say from temp file import name temporary file, right? Because what we are going to do now is we are going to take this file and we're going to write this file into our file system into a temporary file. It's going to be a very temporary file, and once the execution is completed, then the file is going to be deleted, or actually Python is going to take care of deleting this file for us, so we don't really have to do it ourselves. So this is how this is going to work. I'm going to say with name temporary file, I'm going to input the current directory. This is going to be as f, then this is going to be like this, and then the only thing I need to do is to f.write, and then it's going to be something like file get buffer, and that's pretty much all. So here we are saving the image into our computer, into a temporary file, and now we have the file name we need in order to move forward, right? The only thing we need to do is to define a variable which is image path, and image path will be something like f.name, if I'm not mistaken. So this is pretty much all we need to do in order to define this image path, and that's pretty much all we need to do in order to integrate the agent into our web application. This means we are ready. Everything is done. Everything is completed. We have completed this process. And obviously something we need to do first is setting this OpenAI API key, right? Otherwise this is definitely not going to work. So let's just come here to the browser, and you need to go to platform.openai.com, and once you are in this website you need to go to your to this icon, to your personal account, and you need to click on view API keys. Then you need to create new secret key, and you can just create a custom name for this key. I'm just going to say something like LangChain computer vision tutorial key, right? This is going to be a very temporary key. I'm just going to delete it after this is completed. So I'm just going to copy this key and I'm going to paste it here, right? I can show you these keys, no problem, because I'm just going to delete it once this tutorial is over. So you are going to have a key which is going to look something like this. It's going to be a very long sequence of characters. And now let's see if we can continue. Everything should be ready. So I'm just going back here. I'm going to refresh and let's see what happens. Let's see if it works. And we got an error. Okay, let's see what's going on. It seems conversation buffer window memory has something, there's something wrong with this object. So let's go to PyCharm, and if I scroll up, oh, I see I have a typo over here. So now everything should be okay. So I'm just going to refresh. And I got another error. Okay, image caption tool has no attribute name. So if I go back to PyCharm, if I go to tools, I see image caption tool does have an attribute which is called name. So something is wrong. If I go to main, maybe this is the error. Let's see. Maybe I have to create an instance of these two tools. And let's see now. And now everything's okay. Okay, that was the error. And now let's see if everything works fine. Now let's see if I input this image. Let's see what happens. I am going to ask a question about your image. Remember, this is the image we're going to use. And then I am going to ask, please describe this image. And let's see what happens. All right, we get dummy response because we never changed this over here, right? So let's just change it now. We want to write the response, and something else I'm going to do. I noticed that it took a few seconds to execute this command, and in the process, in the meanwhile, I was just looking at a completely blank website. So this is what I'm going to do with st.spinner, and I'm going to input text in progress, and then everything else, right? Because once we are here, we want this spinner so we can just take a look at something while we are doing all the process, all the execution. Now let's go back to the website again, and let's see if now everything works properly. I'm just going to load the image again, and something is not right. I think I made something wrong. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to do it only if the user has input something. So everything else goes here. And also, it doesn't really make any sense to execute the agent response here. So I'm just going to move this over here. And that should be okay. If we go back to the browser, you can see that now if I refresh, we should not be spinning the wheel before I make a question. So everything seems to be okay. So now let's see what happens. Let's see how it works. I'm going to ask, please describe the image. And I got the image shows a man riding a horse with a dog in a field. So everything seems to be working properly. And now let's also test the other tool. Let's test, let's ask the agent, please give me all the objects in this image, their bounding boxes, and confidence score. And I got the objects in the image are a dog, a horse, and a person, which is perfect. And then the bounding boxes and the confidence scores for each object are as follows. And we got all the information exactly as it should be. So everything is just fine. Everything is just amazing. Everything is just ready. We have completed this project. The web application is up and running. We have integrated the agent and everything is working just fine. And now let's do something crazy. Let's do something fun. Let's have some fun. So I'm going to ask the agent something super crazy. I'm going to ask this web application something crazy and let's see what happens. I'm going to ask, please give me a 250 words long science fiction story involving the characters in the image, right? We're not going to be using one of our custom tools, but if we're going to be using an LLM, if we're going to use something like ChatGPT, then it should be enough in order to give us an answer to this question. Let's see what happens. And this is what we got. In a distant future, a man rides his horse through a vast field with his loyal dog by his side. They are on a mission to find a rare mineral that could save their dying planet. As they ride through the field, they come across a strange object that has crash-landed on the planet. The man investigates and finds a group of aliens who have been stranded on the planet. Oh no! The aliens are in a desperate need of help and the man decides to assist them. What a nice guy, right? What a nice guy. Together they embark on a journey to find the rare mineral and save their respective planets. Along the way, they face many challenges and obstacles, but they never give up. Such an inspiration, right? Such an inspiration. In the end, they succeed on their mission and the man and his dog return home as heroes. So, what an amazing story. I don't know what you think, but I think it's an amazing story. So, this is going to be all for this tutorial. This is exactly how you can set up a web application exactly like this one using Python, Streamlit and LangChain, and this is going to be all for today. My name is Felipe, I'm a computer vision engineer. If you enjoyed this video, I invite you to click the like button and I also invite you to subscribe to my channel. This is going to be all for today and see you on my next video.